Clint, welcome to Conversations with Peter Boghossian. How are you?
I'm good, Peter. And it's nice to meet you. I'm a big fan of your work.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate
so-
that. Appreciate that. With a lot of us, it's not just me, it's a lot of us doing this. So, yeah, for those of you who are not familiar with your work, you're an anti-communist activist who goes by the handle Classical Liberal on X, and I always make sure that I at least peek, if not read everything you do, and that's not just that's the truth. So I want to start with this term I keep hearing. I keep hearing this classical liberalism. Like, what is this thing I keep hearing all about?
So it's pretty interesting. Everybody has this, I'll call it conflation when they hear the word liberal. So it's often associated with the left, or being a lefty or old school liberal, or
Right.
on the Democrat side, right? But really, when you actually break it down to the fundamentals, if you go back to the founding, is a set of okay, so everybody has this high level understanding of it: life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, free speech, right to bear arms, right to all that stuff. But actually underpinning all that is a rather robust and fundamental set of core metaphysical beliefs that most Americans that to be honest, I actually did not know about this until like maybe a year ago. And this is after a few years of being in the kind of the anti-communist space or anti-woke space. There's a really robust set of principles underpinning the entire American experiment that pretty much coalesce what we understand as classic liberalism, and that's kind of what I'm here to do. Not just again, it's really great when you look at the principles and you juxtapose them against wokeism or progressivism or even post-liberalism, and so yeah, so it's
so what is it? What is this thing I keep hearing all about? What is classical liberalism?
So everybody understands, like I said, the high level of liberty, right? But the underpinning foundational beliefs are basically around. I think James Lizzie has actually a really good article by the way, on U Discourse for this, where basically the concept is that man is not. We're not divine. We're not God. We're flawed. We're limited. And therefore, we need to arrange the government to anticipate and accommodate these flaws, right? It's not that we can't do good things, but we also do bad things, right? Humans are humans. So let's arrange the government around that. And basically nobody has any kind of divine authority over anybody else. No kings, no emperors, no councils, not even the tyranny of the majority type of thing, right? And so when you do that, when you actually talk about the limits of humanity and mankind, for good or ill, it create and then of course attach the natural rights that every human being comes with, and this includes our ability, cognitive liberty, our ability to think. For human beings are conscious thinking creatures. Our ability to use tooling to defend ourselves and build things, and then the ability to use property to we actually produce. We use all sorts, not just property like land, right, but our own intellectual property and our own work.
How are these rights grounded in anything? Are they rationally derivable?
Yes,
Excuse me.
yeah.
Are they universalizable? Are they just artifacts of a particular geography? The people who live in this part of the world get access to this, but fuck everybody else. I mean, how are we? Talk me through that.
Okay, so yes, so classic liberal, most people don't realize this, is heavily influenced by what's called Scottish realism or Scottish common sense realism. And so their argument is, yes, there's an objective reality, and our rights are the way nature is constructed produces a being like ourselves that has access to all of like we have these rights. They're built intrinsically into our nature, and it's objectively true. It's not any type of social construct, right, that we come up with. That there are just some foundational things about nature and human nature that are objectively real and true, and that all, and they'll tell you this. I think that even if without scripture or revelation or anything like that, that we have access to moral truths based on objective reality, right? So that's kind of where they're basing it from, and everybody has access to it. And then, of course, because we are conscious creatures, right? We can be self-serving, right? And then that's when we, okay, if two or more people realize that they can be self-serving to the detriment of themselves if they don't like a bad thing happening to them, then it stands to reason that their fellow man also doesn't like you indiscriminately taking from them. Therefore, let us get together and work out, the conflict. So let's not indiscriminately take from one another anymore, right?
Okay, so yeah, so you said that this is like a rationally derivable property of humans. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say that's true based on, but the rationalism comes from nature itself, right? So that's how the realists are constructing it. Is that you don't just have rationalism just because you have it; it's because it comes from somewhere. It actually comes from nature, is what their argument is.
So this doesn't apply to other primates. It's only a human thing.
I think they would probably argue that there's a bit of that even within animal nature about working with each other, but we're the only ones who are self-aware of this. So I guess that's where the rationalization comes in. So it's not instinctual. It is instinctual to some extent, but we can rationalize the instinct. So yes, so yes and no. Yeah, yes, that some animals do kind of collaborate socially, but they're not rational about it like we are.
You mean do you mean rationalize the instinct or reason to the instinct?
I think a little bit of both. I think both.
Okay. How would a classical liberal respond to the argument? I'm going to go to Crazyville just for a moment. How would a classical liberal respond to the argument that's a kind of speciesism that privileges itself?
So that privileges itself. Okay, so now, so then I would ask the question: the privilege? Okay, so I'm trying to work this out in my head because so
that's a weird question. I'm just
right, because immediately, so my immediate response to that, or my initial thinking to that, okay, well that is a subjectivist oriented question, meaning that you're trying to reorient me, not you, but the question is reorient my answer to that existence is subjectively constructed, not objectively constructed.
Well, that it places that humans don't occupy a privileged role in the hierarchy of species.
We do only by the objective reality of nature, not because we have rationalized that existence. It just is because it's objectively true, not because we rationalize it as such.
And we know things are objectively true. How?
So what they would argue is, okay, so what Reid is arguing, or Thomas Reid is the Scottish realist, is that what we see in existence, right, is all the senses, all the sensory input we're getting, right, from our eyes and our ears, and what we see actually exists. Now, there's a small argument to be made that and this is where it gets Cartesian, that we're reconstructing that in our mind, right? But what Reid is saying, look, even if you do reconstruct that to some extent, that's understandable to a human being. That table is real. That bear that's about to eat you, that's real, right? So it's not a subjective construct in your mind. That actually exists. And so then we're into the objectivist realm, right? Where, I mean, we all have this shared reality. If you step up, you step off a ladder, you're falling to the earth, right? That's objectively real. So reality impacts you whether you believe it otherwise or not.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So that's a good primer for classical liberalism. How would you now? Can you define progressivism in a minute? or so, or maybe two. And how does that differ from American progressivism?
Well, they're the same. They are linear from a lineage perspective. They are the same. So progressivism comes out of German idealism, and American progressivism is a okay. So progressivism is a transformative belief system, right? And therefore, American progressivism is a transformative version of German idealist progressivism. So it has the exact opposite of everything I just said. So
Okay.
existence is subjective, and not only is it subjective, it is socially constructed. Or you would say that what they would say is that the reason we have a shared reality amongst all of us is because we have a shared consciousness. All the humans in this world have a shared consciousness, and what we believe and agree upon as existence manifests itself as our existence. We just agree that this is the way it is, and therefore, if we imagine a new reality or a new existence, that if you get enough people, or basically everybody, if you get everybody to believe in a new existence, it'll manifest itself. So this is what German idealism is doing. This is what American progressivism is doing. If you have a utopic idea of what an American reality is, where all the human beings or all the Americans in here all believe in the progressive worldview, it'll manifest itself like as reality. And I'm talking, when I say existence, I actually literally mean that we can that a man, you can will that a man could be a woman if everybody believes it, right? That's like literally, existence itself.
Imagine that. So,
So
what do they mean by consciousness?
as far as I can understand, that it's basically the self-awareness that we are self-aware beings, right? And that, so what happens is that they inject, I think Brett Weinstein calls this the Cartesian crisis. It's actually pretty apt. Where, so what Descartes did, so here's the thing, so I think therefore I am, right? So what people don't realize is that Descartes isn't actually saying, hey, we're we're just conscious creatures, that's how we know we're human. What he's saying, he's questioning. It's a question. It's not just a statement. It's like, I think, therefore am I? So it plants this seed of doubt in your mind, because we don't have a third party to corroborate whether or not we exist objectively or not, is what their argument is, right? And so it's this seed that detaches um, your connection to objective truth and reality, right? And so now
Right.
man is his
So,
own creator at this point. So, and we're the only creatures who do this because we're self-aware of it.
is this the reason why? And if you think this is not true, let me know, or apt. Is this the reason why there's rampant biology denialism among progressives?
Absolutely, absolutely. It comes from that belief, that foundational stack, that existence is socially constructed and subjective. That's where it comes from, and it's a couple hundred. It's actually older than that, but it's a few hundred years old now. At least two, maybe
So
three.
draw that line for me to everything is a social construct. There is no objective reality. Biology is a narrative. There are no. Okay, so I'm just going to pause right there. Connect those for me, because I'm sure people listening to this will be like, okay, I can kind of see this, but I just don't get the rampant biology denialism.
Well, so like I mentioned earlier, when I say existence itself, I mean that they cannot. What they're saying is that we cannot objectively prove that existence, like I said, the table, the chairs, right, exist, right, and that because of that, uh, basically what they're making the assertion is that we are the mind of God. So it's a pantheistic. This is a pantheistic worldview where man is a part of we are the divine. We are actually um, uh, the mind of God, and and so, but what they're using is this rationalism and reasoned and empirical veneer. They're using this exoteric veneer to underpin this belief system underneath. And so, and Descartes is a part of that kind of this pantheistic worldview, and that's what he's doing. So he's basically doing it on purpose to get us to have this divine. We are man as creator is basically is what it ends up being, right? Man, of his own existence, and so even reality itself. So which is why biology to them is the same thing. It's no different than the table, the chair, or anything else. That if we all believe that we have a new existence, we can change even biology, even the nature of man himself, right? Even like we don't no more killing or lying or stealing or cheating or manipulating or
It's systems. The
right.
problem is found in systems that we've created to. Yeah. Okay. So explain, if you would, please, Clint. So what does classical liberalism say about progress and how we get it? And what does American progressivism say about progress and how we get that?
Okay. Wow. So classic liberalism. So when you look at it, when they established the Constitution, and of course only landowners had suffrage, the right to vote, right? But you still had this underpinning underneath it about every human being has natural rights and the consent of the governed, and there's a logical progression to say, okay, there's a group of people, right, non-landowners, men, right, women, black people or slaves, right, that don't have the same rights, right, as everybody else. So there's this natural progression in classical liberalism, like, hey, look, if these are universal natural rights to every human being on earth, then we need to make sure that everybody has the same rights. Like that the government is not obstructing you from participating in this in liberalism, in liberty, and which is everybody needs to understand that liberalism has responsibility. You don't just get liberalism. There's responsibility involved with participating in this government framework. So it's a logical progression of expanding liberty to everybody. It's built intrinsically into the metaphysical framework of liberalism. So that would be what I would consider classic liberal progress. And then, of course, it's really good at conflict resolution. Right? I have my ideas, you have your ideas. We're problem solving, and maybe we do solve the problem and compromise and do all sorts of interesting things. And maybe we walk away and we don't agree and we just walk away, and that's okay. It's okay for us to have our different beliefs, and as long as we're not forcing each other.
And that's the cognitive liberty piece that
yes,
okay,
absolutely.
So American progressives, what?
So that's different, because the minute you attach yourself to a subjective, socially constructed reality, what happens is that you're saying is that what I need to do in order to have progress happen, everyone needs to believe in progressivism, right? So now you're in conflict, right? You're in a conflict-oriented relationship. You're not, it's not everybody believes whatever they want. It's no. In order for us to become this utopic American ideal, everybody has to believe in progressivism, which is underpinned by this pantheistic faith, this Cartesian subjectivism underneath, right?
And everybody has to believe that, because we can't achieve utopia if there's dissent.
That's correct. So we are in the way of progress. People who believe in objective reality and truth are in the way, and we must be removed. And so this makes it even more conflict oriented. And the way progressivism is constructed, and goes back to Hegel and Marx and Woodrow Wilson, is that we need to have tactics in order to overcome people's belief in objective reality. And so they created this thing called the dialectic. Which is an antagonistic approach to progress. And so what people need to understand is that progressivism classic liberalism is about conflict resolution. American progressivism is about conflict, the creation of conflict on purpose, because that is how they see progress is made, through conflict. It's kind of like this Darwinistic battle of ideas. Their idea must progressivism must overwrite liberalism completely. And so what they'll do, and there's two ways to do it: either radically, like you attack it like the Marxists do, or you do it incrementally. You subvert it. You slowly get people to compromise on their. When I say compromise the integrity of the limiting principles that classic liberalism is built upon, right? And so progressivism, progress is it means eroding. So think about this. So classic liberalism is about limited man, limited government. Progressivism, because it's views man as becoming God. That's part of the thing. I forgot to extrapolate on that. That the entire premise of progressivism is to this utopic idea is because it's pantheistic, is for man to become God, or man to become creator of existence, right? And so that means you're unlimited. So now you have a situation where you have a framework built upon unlimited man, unlimited government. And so limited man, limited government, like it needs to erode that concept of limited man, limited government. And so that's what progressivism does. That's what the dialectic does. It seeks to erode the limiting principles of classic liberalism. So so that is how progress is made, by the erosion of our limiting principles. It's conflict oriented.
Okay. So which of these systems, and let me know if this is an empirical question or if it's not an empirical question, which of these systems lends itself to totalitarianism?
Progressivism, without doubt, because it has no limits. It is unbound. It is unlimited.
That was Jim's speech at Oxford too.
Yeah. And so it can't. And it's like, I'm talking about like axiomatically, like unlimited. Like it values unlimited.
Okay, so if that's true, why do so many progressives call people who disagree with them fascists and Nazis?
Because you are preventing them from progressivism. You're in the way, right? And so because they're unlimited, so they have progressivism. Okay, especially the more radical version of it, like there are some moderate progressives. We can talk about that in a minute, because progressivism, there's a couple of complex components to it, but the radical version of it has no limiting principles on principle, right? So limitations prevent man becoming creator, right? So anything that would prevent you from being nice or compromising or like anything that stands in your way, it's okay to do whatever you need to do to get rid of that, because God cannot be wrong. The state, if you're a state actor who believes in this, the state is the divine will of the people, because it's a collectivist belief system, cannot be wrong. So it doesn't matter if they're mean or they're tyrannical or they're hypocritical. It doesn't matter to them, as the only operational success towards eroding the limiting principles of our society matter to them, right? And so
just to be clear again, those limiting principles of classical liberals are what?
So that we're not okay. So we're not divine, right? We're not God, and so I don't take. So we've all agreed not to take each other's stuff, right? Not to take each other's lives, right? Not to and it's an agreement, right? It's like I agree to do, you agree to it, I agree to it. We've both agreed, and not only that, we'll defend it. We'll defend this. I'll protect if somebody attempts to take your rights. I'll try and help you, right? Or we have police and military for this type of stuff. We've agreed that there's some protections needed for this, and we all are in this together to not do bad things to each other, right? But progressivism slowly erodes those things, because when you limit yourself, especially at the state level, right? You cannot. Their whole goal is to get everybody reoriented to another worldview, right? Not limited man, but unlimited man. And so every time you put niceties and self restrictions on that, you're in the way of progress immediately. And so this is why they get upset and mean and visceral when you do that, and it doesn't bother them. It's part of it's just to get you out of the way, and they'll use stigmatization and anything. This especially the radicals that do this, right?
Do they buy into the law of non-contradiction, or what do they think about hypocrisy? Or is that just not a thing for them? Like,
yeah, it's not. Okay, so oh man, this is trying to not get too deep into the dialectic, but so the dialectic you can hold to
my audience
them.
can handle it. Go ahead.
Okay. So the dialectic means that so it's two opposites. Okay, so two contradictions. Okay, but when I talk about it being a pantheistic belief system, it's the undifferentiated all, meaning there is no distinctions. Everything is the same. That I like to call it the same, right? So blue and red are the same. Man and woman are the same. Man and God are the same. So when a progressive, a radical progressive, or wokester holds two contradictory, hypocritical positions, that's perfectly logical to them to do that. They can hold both positions at the same time. They can flip between both positions at the same time. And to us, people who don't do that, it seems crazy. But when you put yourself in the seat that that you can have that the contradictions are basically irrelevant, that everything's the same to them, good and bad, right? Right and wrong are the same, then their hypocrisy actually makes sense. It's weird to say this. It has logical consistency if you believe that everything is the same, that there's no distinctions in anything, right? But to people who don't hold to that belief, it's very confusing. But when you put yourself there, it has logical consistency. So this is why they can have contradictory or hypocritical positions, and they don't even bat an eye about it. They don't care. It makes sense to them to do that. It basically all they care about is moving the football forward to an unlimited form of government, right? An unlimited society.
So two things. The first question is, how could the claim? Okay, so we need to do some definitions here to clarify things. So you mentioned a couple of times post-liberalism. Another phrase I keep hearing Clint bandied about. What is post-liberalism?
So now we're moving a little bit to the right. It's still on the left side. It still comes post-liberalism. There's a couple of variants of it, but the overwhelming majority, at least the ones we're mostly concerned with, all go back down to the same German idealism. It goes to the same pantheistic belief system, the same esotericism, same. So communism and fascism. So post-liberalism is, if you want to call it, the moderate side of fascism. You can. So post-liberal. So basically it is. It's just a moderate form of fascism. Is what it is. And so it's kind of weird to say this. Fundamentally, they believe the same thing, but their exoteric veneer is so the mundane way they wrap or package what they're packaging is a conservative one instead of a progressive one, right? So they're paying lip service to conservatism, but underneath it is the same ideological stack as communism or radical leftism, and that is man is becoming God. Even though, and a lot of times they'll hide under, they'll put Christianity as a veneer on front of that, but that is not that's not solely under the domain of the right. The left, that's the matter of fact, how wokeism got here in the first place is through Christianity and something called the social gospel. So it happens everywhere. So progressives, conservatives using rationalism, reason, empiricism, and even Christianity as a cloak for their esoteric beliefs underneath. So post-liberalism, all they're saying is that they want the man, the state as the divine will. It's the same thing as the left, but instead of a state pushing a progressive utopia, they're pushing a conservative utopia. that's really the primary difference in post-liberalism and the Constitution is in the way of unlimited. They tell you they want a unbound executive, is what they want.
And no line item vetoes.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
And
they
so
want line item vetoes. Yeah.
you're talking
Yeah.
about an unlimited government. So it's the same thing. It's the exact same thing. It's just a conservative veneer over
Yeah,
top
it's
of
such a pertinacious, those people. It's interesting. Okay, so then the other thing is what is something we hear about? We don't need to go back to Ayn Rand unless you want to, but what is this libertarian thing I keep hearing about? What is all this hullabaloo about?
So libertarianism is, I think, just like some of the other things, is complex. There are some libertarians that I would say are closer to what I'm talking about. Like they're probably closer aligned with classic liberalism. There are others on the libertarian side that kind of cave into almost an anarchistic moral relativism.
Hmm.
And those are harder to suss out. Like when you squint at them, you can kind of see the same. There's some pantheistic, the same unlimited. Like now you've kind of deified the individual, right? It's still man becoming God. It's the same thing, but it's atomized, right? So they're propping it up, and it leads itself to kind of this moral relativism. But it's the same when you pop the hood under that, or you lift that rock, it ends up being in the same kind of man becoming God, pantheistic. They'll deny it. I mean, just most people don't. That's not that they'll deny it; they just don't know. Almost overwhelmingly, the unless you're in the intellectual stack of this, almost overwhelmingly, most normies, their epistemic depth on even some of the stuff we talk about classic liberalism, they just don't know. They're just kind of on these praxis rails on top of it, and they don't understand some of the intellectual and philosophical and even religious drivers that are moving the governance movement that they're participating in.
It's funny. It's funny. It reminds me of something my dad said to me once. I told him that I think we should teach epistemology, basic epistemology, starting in K through 12. And he basically laughed at me, and he said, "Why don't we start teaching them how to read or how to add?"
Well, no, they used to do that. So most people don't realize that the Scots during the Scottish realist time, a little bit before that,
I'm talking about here in the United States.
No, and even early in the United States, in the colonial days, they were doing that. They talk about they actually talk about epistemology and ontology and metaphysics to a small extent, especially to the early teen children, so they would know what and as a matter of fact, a lot of the American founders were the Cartesian strain was coming in and eroding objective of the metaphysics of realism, and a few of the founders spent several decades trying to get that out of the universities and schools in America, because they saw what was happening and they didn't like it, and they had a lot of criticism for that line of thought. And a lot of people don't understand that we used to do this. We actually used to teach metaphysics and epistemology to our kids back in the colonial days, and there's a reason that got kicked out.
Well, okay, so pause on the reason, because what's the reason? Because I wasn't aware of that at all.
So Immanuel Kant and John Stuart Mills purposely boxed out, because they're Cartesian, they're the theory ideas. They purposely, especially Kant, iced out Thomas Reid and the Scottish realists out of the university system in Europe, and which allowed German idealism to flourish across the world, because it became the hot stuff of the intellectual world during its time. And then by the 1900s, what happened is that the leftists, like Dewey the pragmatists, pretty much were saying, hey, you can't talk about metaphysics because some of that is attached to Christianity. Therefore, First Amendment infringement, so we can't talk about this anymore. And so basically they replaced common sense metaphysics with pragmatism and praxis.
Mm.
So now we have no defense against discernment of what I would call this Cartesian thought, that this social constructivist thought that was entering our education system in the United States. So
that's an important point. Yeah.
Yeah. So by the late 1800s, America had started working. The left had started working on kicking out classic liberal metaphysics and bringing in German idealism
So
into our stuff.
I want to come back to something you said, because I think it's so important. So my question is, to participate in civil society, how important is it to know some political philosophy?
If you're going to
Or
participate in
all of it, yeah. Go ahead.
I think it is critical to actually understand. So here's the thing: as we've been talking, and when I just laid out the top few things that classic liberalism believes in, and right, like man is not God, we're flawed and limited, we have natural rights, right? Limited man, limited government. If you just talk at a very, just even a superficial level of those things, right? It helps. And then you bring in progressivism. It's like, this is what they believe. You automatically have a stronger sense of what your political milieu is doing, what your political parties are doing, and what they believe in, right? And so you start asking questions, because otherwise you don't know how to ask questions. You just kind of just driving around society not knowing what's going on at all, right? And just basic fundamental things that help us discern what is going on in our political
Okay.
milieu.
So why can't we just judge a candidate based on their policies without knowing any political philosophy?
Because again, this is the biggest kicker that everybody needs to understand about how leftism works. Okay, is that and I call it the exoteric. It's this that they use this exoteric veneer. Okay, so their policies. So Kamala Harris, for example, is talking about how we need to our ROI. We need to have a different perspective on how we judge ROI. Okay. Okay. Well, that is an exoteric veneer for communism, for the to bring in what they call it's a different form, a well-being economy, not free enterprise, right? But a communist well-being economy, esoterically smuggled in using the same words of economics. So this is so when you see a leftist policy, and it looks like it's reasoned and it's rational, and maybe even has some empirical evidence with it, or some type of historical anecdote, or even science backing it. It's quotes the science. It's an exoteric veneer, right? Underpinning an esoteric belief system. And the problem is that they come always packaged. You cannot decouple the two. That's not how leftism works. They couple these things, right? And so if you don't understand what animates the actual exoteric policy that they're driving, you'll just say, "Oh, okay, that's not." You may say, "No, I don't agree with that," or maybe they'll keep tweaking it until you accept it, right? To some extent. But what's happening is they're shuffling in man is becoming God, or the state is a divine will. And the state is a divine will is a completely different governance framework than the American project. And so that's what's happening. So all of the policy that they're talking about, to me, my question is, okay, not what's your policy? What do you believe in? Do you believe, like, where did you get your ideas from about how society should govern itself? Right? Did you get it from FDR? Did you get it from Woodrow Wilson? Where'd you get it from? Right? Because that will tell me whether or not you believe in classic liberalism or progressivism, right? Like that. And so then now your policy, I'm looking at it a little bit more with more discernment, Okay, what are you trying to do here? Like, are you expanding the remit of the government beyond
Yeah.
a limited function?
Yeah. I had I used to get these emails when I taught at a university I will not name, and people would come in. They say, "Hey, it's at the very beginning of the semester, like the first week. Student groups, can we come in and do this?" And as long as they were student groups, I pretty much let them come in, because I tried to do my best to support that, to support the students in that. And I had a group come in one time, and I'm almost hesitant to tell this because I know that this story is going to be misconstrued. And they were saying that they wanted to recruit students to go into low income neighborhoods to register people to vote. And I just said, like, I don't, if you have to go in to register someone to vote, something is already wrong there. Like, there's a whole host of things that went wrong to lead you to lead to that. And the Republican or the conservative criticism, the Republican conservative criticism specifically, is that you're just recruiting Democrats. That these people vote Democrats. That's not my criticism at all. My criticism is it's effortless to register to vote. I mean, it literally takes. And the time I was in Oregon, I don't know how long it takes where I am now, but it takes but a minute. So, but if you have to do that, then it just makes me question whether or not that person is like. I just can't imagine they have any concept of political philosophy if they don't know how to register to vote. So isn't
Yeah,
like registering to vote a kind of litmus test? I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking through this. But anyway, I asked this young woman these questions, and God, the kind of ersatz probity, the kind of like, I don't know, just it was just so striking to me that she just thought I was such a horrible person for asking those questions. Um, so I'm just trying to think about how, like, going in and registering people to vote in poor neighborhoods, or now it would be illegal immigrants, how that would, what political ideology that would comport best with.
well, there's two problems. So it's mostly it'll be on the left. It'll be the progressive side. But the system was, as far as I'm concerned, is constructed that way. So basically, they'll do whatever it takes to get every single vote, right? They need to be active, right? That's progress, right? They have to go out there and do all that, and they'll do it by hook or crook. But then the system is kind of been over the last few decades has been designed to demoralize voters, right, and demoralize civic duty. This is part of the problem, right? Like we don't know. Most people are not intrinsically engaged with the civics of American liberty, and this is on purpose, right? And so then what happens on the conservative side is so when you erode everybody's civic duty, well, now the left, right, can go out and do this work themselves. Now they can just go out and since everybody's inert and nobody wants to defend American liberalism, they can go
Mm,
out and start getting these people. So and then the conservatives are seeing this. So what's happening is because they've been kind of sitting on their hands this whole time, letting the left erodes our civic engagement at the
mm.
and when I say that, I actually mean understanding, not just engagement with American ideas, right? Like the
I was
principles, right?
thinking exactly the same thing.
And
Yeah.
so the
Yeah.
Republicans just kind of sat there and let it. Either they were semi-complicit, which is controlled opposition, which is possible or probable in some cases, but also, but as they're sitting on their hands and they're seeing the Democrats going by hook or crook to do this, and now it's too late. The erosion has happened, and now conservatives have to put boots on the ground to do the same thing because otherwise, the left are going to capture these votes, right? And so now
Mm, mm,
what you have is now you have both parties by plan doing the same and not working to build up our civic engagement, but playing in the same stupid dialectical milieu. Like it's completely on purpose when that happens, when when all parties are engaging the same dialectical behavior, right? Because of the successful erosion of our engagement with the civics of
Mm.
America.
Yeah, it's
So,
interesting. And then I have a chart that I'd like to ask Reed to pull up for you to explain. But I asked this young woman and her friend, let's just say in some strange reality that we live in, all of the poor people were conservative Republicans who were anti-pro-choice. Would you still be doing this? And I think they were a little caught as a deer in a headlight, and I didn't really mean to give them a hard time, but I mean, it is a kind of activism, right? So you should be able to field some questions, especially if you're walking into a critical thinking class. It was a critical thinking class. Okay, so I want to Reed, can you pull up that political chart and then
oh
and then,
yay!
and then oh, you've seen this before.
No, it's my chart.
Oh,
I
yes,
created.
yes, yes, yes. Okay, so I was wondering if you can talk about this, please.
Okay, so and this is I have I've been doing copious amounts of research of tracking. Okay, so one of the reason this chart exists, it's kind of funny because you brought up post liberals. Okay, the reason this chart exists for a couple of reasons. One of the main reasons is because post liberals, this is on the right. This is the moderate fascist groups, are criticize classic liberalism as the source of all our problems. They're saying, no, the reason we have wokeism is because of classic liberalism allows it, right? Not understanding that how wokeism, leftism got in the United States was through Christianity in the first place. So their argument from the get-go is already askew, right? It's distorted. But
I just want to interrupt you for a second and say,
sure.
like, this is the first time I've seen this. This is an extraordinarily detailed chart. I don't know. I'm trying to think for how the people listening on the podcast
Yeah.
you could possibly explain this. This is
Yeah.
just like the whole kitchen sink of thinkers throughout
Yeah.
ages is thrown in here. The
Well,
Frankfurt
actually,
School, everything is in here. Critical
actually,
theory.
yeah. Actually,
Yeah.
if you want, watch. So this is better actually for everybody just to pan out a little bit. Okay. And so the best thing to point out about this is that if you look at the difference between classic liberalism and its through line, okay, because classic liberalism uses universal principles.
Okay, pretend now people are listening to this
Yeah.
too and they can't see this. Okay, go ahead.
So there's the charts bifurcated, right? There's a top part with that's for just classic liberalism, and the bottom part is basically for all that is leftism, and this includes fascism and American progressivism and communism and wokeism. Okay, so on the top, it's very succinct because American liberalism has universal principles. It's basically the primary thinkers are going to be like John Locke, the Scottish realist Thomas Reid, James Beatty, James Oswald, and then the founders, Madison, Jefferson, James Wilson. And it kind of just stops from there because classic liberalism does not iterate. It's using universal principles, right? So even as we expanded,
that's such an important point. Yep.
Yeah, even as the suffrage expanded, right, it was still bound to the universal principles of classic liberalism. So it doesn't expand. It doesn't iterate. So and then you look at the bottom, and what you'll see if you guys ever run into this chart is just the spaghetti network of iterative splinters of basically pantheism or dialectal pantheism. It's just basically leftism, right? And it goes through the historical. It basically tracks it back down to a lot of esoteric, like ancient esotericism, right? Then it hits up to the Enlightenment. So we're talking about Descartes, mainly Descartes and Kant, and then to the German idealists. And then from German idealism, it splits out to fascism, communism, American progressivism, critical theory, and our modern, even neocons are in here because they're kind of they're Trotskyites. And so it all splits out, but it's all when you go all the way back, it all underneath the same umbrella of, I think James Lindsay calls it this theosophical worldview. It's syncretic, right? It's the same belief system. All of it's kind of weird. It's a spaghetti network, but it's iterative. So progressivism is iterative. So this is why there's so many splinters of this thing, because it's trying to eat away at different avenues of our social institutions, right? So our conservative institutions, our progressive institutions, our religious institutions, right? So there's a splinter, and even our identity, right? Like for men, for women, for Black people,
disrupt and dismantle and queering.
Correct. And so it's this way I can actually, so the post liberals are saying we're classic liberalism is the problem, and I'm trying to say no, because they never ever criticize classic liberalism at Thomas Reed. They never do this. They always they go to John Stuart Mills, they go to Hobbes, they go to Rousseau and Kant sometimes, and I'm like guys, they're not the same. They don't have the same metaphysics. They have complete, like the Scottish realists and the Cartesian thinkers have completely different metaphysics, as we talked about. Like there's an objective reality in classic liberalism. There's not, like that. The underpinning is subjective, socially constructed worldview for all the other thinkers. And so the post liberals are throwing shade on classic liberalism, and they're completely off base because they are not. And here's the funny thing: they're a part of that. They're actually a part of the thing they're criticizing, right? And my argument is that they would have a lot harder time, because part of the post liberals are attached to a Christian worldview. They'd have a lot harder time criticizing the metaphysics of Thomas Reed than Immanuel Kant by a long shot. So yeah, that's what the chart's for, is but it also helps people understand. Even liberals, right? Hey, guys, look, you're in the same chart, right? Belief system as Hitler and Lenin and Stalin and Mao, right? It doesn't matter, that you're a moderate version of that. You're coming out. You are coming off the same ideological belief system as some of the most horrific movements in human history, right?
Habermas used to call that dark modernism.
Yeah, right. And so you're on, your foundation is on pillars. Your ideological foundation is on pillars of sand, right? You will eventually tumble into tyranny by attaching yourself to progressivism.
Okay,
right?
So that's a great line. Reed, we got to remember that line. Okay, so just to be clear, when you talk about Reed, you're not talking about my Reed, you're talking about the Scottish Reed.
Yeah, Thomas Reed. I implore everybody.
Not Reed Nice Wonder.
No. Yeah. I implore everybody to look up Thomas Reed. Look up James Wilson, who was instrumental in constructing the Constitution, and he was a big time Scottish realist guy. And the reason I say you look up James Wilson is because he kind of Americanizes the Scottish realist disposition. James Beatty is really good because him and Reed were kind of contemporaries, but he's kind of a poet, so he's got an artistic view to this. So if anybody wants to know what America is about, go look up the Scottish realists. They're amazing. As a matter of fact,
haven't read that stuff in grad school. Finish your thought, and then I'm going to ask you a concrete question.
Okay. Well, I was just saying that it will help you guys. Anybody, it will help you. It'll kind of anchor you foundationally in a way that you can use that to contrast. Because I used to wonder what made America special. What made us different? Why are we different than Europe? Why than all the other things in the world?
For those, some people don't buy into American exceptionalism, but
right, and this is it. It's Scottish realism. It's American realism is what makes us different, because we are bound by limiting principles, and everything else, especially since the 1800s, rejects that. That's what makes us special, right? And so if you really want to know what makes us special, go look up Thomas Reed. Go look up James Wilson. It's good stuff.
Cool. Okay, so now I want to get to the meat and potatoes of this conversation, please. So I think we have a good base. I think we've defined our terms. I think we've sketched out the basics, and we're good to go. So what political philosophy does each candidate align with most and why? And it's Harris and Trump. You're
Yeah.
laughing. Why are you laughing?
It's gonna be complicated. It's gonna be complicated. I don't think
Okay.
a lot of people are not gonna like some of the answers I have to this, but it's
Okay.
okay.
Well, then they can go on another show and rebut what you have to say.
Especially on the conservative side, it's gonna be a little hairy, but
Okay, go ahead. Well, we like that. Go ahead.
okay. So Harris is easy. She's communist. She has a communist background. I think Waltz or VP has a communist background. So that's relatively easy to pin down. So, Trump, on the other hand, is he's not a conservative. He's more classically I would call him. So the thing
Okay.
go ahead.
Hold on 1 second. Let's pause. So I was just thinking about the question I asked, but so let's go back to communism and Harris as a communist. Some may hear that as an extraordinary claim. What is your evidence for that claim?
This is actually a lot easier to explain. Although James Lindsay does it a lot better at this, and you guys should go check his stuff out. He'll tell you so in more depth.
And James's site is on New Discourses.
New Discourse, yeah. So the thing about communism, everybody, especially people who argue it's not communism, is that, and this is really easy to get people to admit, I think, is that communism itself and all the intellectuals that contributed to communism all the intellectuals tell you themselves that communism is a transformative belief system. Okay. So every step of the way is very easy to track. Marx to Lenin. So Marx is transforming Hegel. Lenin and Stalin are Mao are transforming Marx. Marcuse is transforming Lenin, Stalin, and Mao. Horkheimer is transforming Marcuse. Kimberly Crenshaw is transforming. So now we're into the critical theory, critical race theory, queer theory. Derek Bell. All those people are transforming communism. The exoteric veneer of every transformation doesn't they're putting it whether in class or race or sex or normalcy, right, or queer, right, and all, but the underpinning esoteric belief system are identical. They're just making this iterative thing, right? So and communism infiltrates every single one of our institutions, whether it be our cultural institutions, education, religion, government, and capitalism. Like or I don't even like, I shouldn't even say capitalism, our free markets, or like all of our corporations, they're in there, right? And so the whole bag of, when I say Kamala Harris is a communist, and besides the fact that her father is a Marxist and her mom,
but that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. I mean, this is not a Klingon society where you're judged by the sins of your father. But what are her? And I'm trying to think. Like, I don't want this to be an unfair question too, because she hasn't revealed any policy proposals. So so it's kind of an unfair question, but it's also a claim to me. Like, so what is it about her specifically that makes her a communist?
I mean, even if you look at her, like, well, I mean, obviously the tax on unrealized capital gains. I mean, you're talking about the as I think James put it, the forced, or I don't know if the word's forced, but the redistribution of property, right, of other people's economic property.
That was just utterly astonishing to me.
Right. So you have that. You have I believe her hold on. So she had, she was, and then of course she was talking about ROI. So now we're talking about a well-being economy. So again, so when you talk about well-being economy, it's central planning of the economy. So who's doing the well-being? Well, a combination of the state and the corporate, right? Of establishing, it's not about enterprise and competition, free enterprise and competition. It's about the managed redistribution of well-being. Like, how do we get there, right? It's not, the state has a hand in it. So almost overwhelmingly, the stuff she does has a communist like I think James calls it a dingist, like the Deng Xiaoping underpinning of how they go about their, and it's the new model for how global.
Days. Yeah.
Yeah.
Couldn't that question, correct me if I'm wrong, couldn't that just be answered in one word, equity, and how
Yes,
it's put
absolutely.
in?
That's a
Okay.
communist belief, right? It's Leninist. It's like literally Leninist. There's actually proof that Lenin also had a DEI program. The names were different, but it was pretty much identical to what we're doing here.
Okay. So the and I have a buddy of mine who just sends me these things. It's you can look at the federal government. If people don't believe me, they can just look at how many times the word equity is written into the
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, from each according to his ability to each according to his need. This should sound familiar.
Yeah. I mean, even her, unburdened by what has been, right?
Yeah.
Is a spell. It's like I think James said, it's basically a communist spell that she's casting, right? It's the same.
Okay. Okay. So I think we've got the communist thing with Harris, and so here's the problem. Here's the problem that I face. Instead of someone saying, like, people just don't. That was it's great. Unburdened by what has been. Yeah. So that's a picture. Reed, put the picture up again. Reed takes the picture down too quick. There's Stalin. That famous picture where he and so instead of that, there's Harris and Biden is looking. People have done that with the left and Robin DiAngelo because of the plagiarism stuff. Unburdened by what has been. So he just writes out. Okay, where was I going with that?
Yeah, the label, I'm assuming is like just throwing that around, right? Is that?
Yeah, well, the problem is that this is the problem when you refuse to engage in conversation with people. Instead of saying, oh, Clint is wrong and that's not true, and we have a conversation with them, like the W Path people. Reed and I are going to be in, not the Scottish Reed, are going to be in Portugal, and I invited them to have a conversation with me when I talk at GenSpec. And I'd be the perfect person. I'm not an expert in gender, and they could just explain their ideas. And that's the problem. It's that the people who think that Harris is not a communist won't talk. I still just can't get over this idea that you could run for any office and not talk about what your policies are. I mean, I don't even understand how you could run for dog catcher and not talk about what your policies are.
I mean, it's kind of weird to me, but to me, it's in complete alignment with how communists go about their business.
Oh, totally. 100%, 100%. But what I mean by that is that the electorate buy it. Like, people are like, oh, okay, yeah, well, she's great. She's a great person. She's a black woman or an Indian woman or whatever she is today. She's like, she's a likable person. I like the way she dresses. She has, she's just, she's good vibes. She's good vibes.
So I think it ties back to what happened to our education system for the last 100 years, where what I would call leftist praxis, because praxis is replacing praxis is replacing common sense, right? So our common sense has been so eroded that half of our country are on the praxis rails of unlimited man, of leftism, of progressivism, right? So, and they don't know it, right? And they don't understand because they don't have common sense to discern what is happening underneath. So they're just participating. I think there was this good example. It's like a toddler in Montessori school. They don't know anything about Montessori. They're just participating in it, right? Right. And they're a byproduct of Montessori training. And so this is what's happening to our society writ large. Half of our country are basically on praxis rails of leftism, and they're not aware of it. They have common sense. They've never had common sense built in because we don't talk about this stuff, right? And so this is how, to me, how communism works, because it's basically they're participating in a religious faith, and they're just kind of not aware of it. Because the exoteric veneer is secular looking, right? It looks American, but it's religious. This is why they do it. They're you could see they're dedicated to the party.
Okay, let's go back to Trump now. There he is again. Good old Donald.
So Trump's a little more complicated.
What political philosophy does Trump align with most?
Okay, so and people aren't gonna like this. So he does have. So when I wanna take just a second and talk about a disaffected liberal. Um, so what we might call an old school liberal. Uh, and so we've been talking a lot this whole time as me breaking down progressivism and like it's trying to erode all of our limiting principles. So one of the things about the Hegelian stack or Wilsonian progressivism, I guess is a better way of putting it, is that even though it's trying to establish unlimited government, it does believe in virtue, American virtues, progressive virtues. So it's this is different than Marxism is the other way around. Marxism wants to eradicate. This is why you have disaffected liberals, because Marxism is attacking because even though progressivism and Marxism are both dialectical belief systems, even Marxism or wokeism is attacking. They don't care. They'll attack progressivism because they invert. It's an inversion of Hegelianism, right? Of virtue.
So many people don't understand that.
So
Many people don't understand that. So many old school liberals just don't get that.
right. But the thing is, it's kind of weird. Even you're on the same belief rails, but it's just that Marxism just wants to attack any virtue whatsoever. Any American virtue is oppressive. We got to get rid of that, right? So Trump is probably an old school lefty, right? On what I would call Wilsonian rails. It's still Hegelian. It's not fully. So the thing about an old school liberal is what Woodrow Wilson did is he synthesized Hegelianism and American liberalism, and he put them together. So this is why old school liberals can hold American values while still trying to get more government involved in what we do. Right. It's why they can do both of those at the same time. Okay, so Trump still has some foundational, what I would call classic liberal sensibilities, but there's still a little bit of there's still that underpinning of Wilsonian-ish progressivism under his belief system. He's not fully classic liberal or fully conservative in that way, but it's at least, but he's enough of there's enough there where he just doesn't care. And he's got FU money. Like, I don't care what you think about me. I don't like what you're doing. We're doing it different. And so classic or old school lefties still believe in the American ideal. They just, for my comfort, just a little bit too much wanting, like they want a little bit more government than even I would be comfortable with, right? So from a classical liberal perspective, right? Because there's still this, we think the government can, if it's like this, there's a little bit of hubris involved, right? If we could just corral and get our own government, we can change the world. We can better humanity. And I get that. I get the sentimentality to that. It's just that I don't think humans are designed to control that much central planning at that scale. Right?
Yeah. Okay. So Trump then. Okay. So
he's not a communist, right? For sure. But
no, for sure, no.
Yeah, but he's a little bit of an old school liberal lefty.
Okay, now I know why you said people are going to freak out about that.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with that. Like, here's the thing. It's I think I was talking to James about this, or on Twitter on it, and I'd rather take my chances with old school lefty liberals, even if we don't agree, we're not on the same metaphysical footing, because they're slow rolling the change of American government. The woke, the Marxists are trying to radically change it today, right, and erode everything we ever held dear to us. And being this type of conversation, Peter, is that look, progressives or old school lefties, I get it. You want to help people, but we gotta, if you want to help people, let's plant our metaphysical tent pole in objective reality and truth and classic liberalism, and then work our way from there. Let's not erode our limiting principles to get things done.
Okay. Reed has another chart, not the Scottish Reed. I have to keep saying that from now on. Okay, Reed, let's way pull it up. I can't see it.
Yeah, I'm squinting. Oh
So
yeah.
there's
Oh yeah.
Kant and Rousseau to
Mhm.
Hegel,
Yep.
Feuerbach and Hegel to Marx,
Yep.
Marx psychology, sociology to neo-Marxism. And I never specifically don't talk about Marxism, and I can tell you why later. Um, and then that is identity Marxism.
This looks yeah, accurate. Yeah.
Yeah, and then identity Marxism and postmodernism, social constructivism to theories of critical social justice synthesizes intersectionality. That's a really good chart. Who made that chart? Do we know? I don't know. Okay, so Reed doesn't know. I think my dog wants to get out. Okay, so talk to us about that.
I mean, it's basically a genealogy tree of how iterative. In this case, it looks like iterative of Marxism is through so there's still other splinters because the Dengism is its own deal to the global communism, and Dengism is kind of its own offshoot of this. But this is how what
I
we're
have
looking
to
at
let my
here.
dog out. You just go on. I have to let my dog out.
Yeah, so for everybody's looking here, it's just a genealogy tree, but of basically how communism actually looks here in the United States today. So so you could almost call it American communism to some extent. So
Okay, sorry.
yeah, so this is genealogy of what American communism basically is kind of how it lines out. There's a little bit more stuff involved. Like I said, the Dengism, corporate communism is kind of embedded in, it's a splinter of that line of thought, but this is how it's so that's what I'm saying. It's transformative, right? It's showing you how communism has transformed itself to mirror American culture, right? And they're very good at isolating what it is that will divide us, right? Because it's and cause conflict. So because it's a conflict based belief system, right? So they hone in on the things that are intrinsically most important to us, and that's usually like around a tribal, right? That's what they're in the American context, right? You're since you're
Identitarianism.
yeah, identitarianism. Yeah, that's where that's really where they picked up steam over here is through that.
So this may seem unrelated, but let me ask. So I saw this picture of, these people that I can't remember. They like dress up as dogs and like it's some kind of sexual fetish.
Oh yeah,
I don't know what they're
furries.
No, but this is specifically but yeah, I guess it's in that general category. And they um go to gay pride parades and such.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I saw an account that said from someone who is ostensibly gay, and I assume they were gay. If or maybe it was just a joke, I don't know, but something like if I had known this was coming, I'd go back in the closet or something like that. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, okay, so you talk about getting shit. I'm going to get a ton of shit for this, but I don't really have a problem with people who are clothed, who wear dog masks. I don't think it's particularly good for the gay movement. In fact, it's probably not. But I don't have a problem with people who just want to get together in nonviolent ways. Yeah, in nonviolent ways and abide by the law. Yeah. So see the dog mask there. Reed and I saw that in L.A. Reed, is that the video you took from L.A.? I don't know. That looks like the Reed. Oh no, it's too dog. It's too dog oriented. Okay, so the dude's naked, so that's not. We need to have some kind of, but what would a classical liberal say about this? What would a progressive say about this? What would a Republican or a conservative say about this?
So from a classic liberal perspective, I would probably there are if we're talking about, I probably just fall back to indecency laws like, let's stick within the realms of
Right, but let's
decency,
say they
right?
all had their clothes on.
Is that'd be fine from a classical liberal, and they're not agitating, they're not tearing things down, they're not doing
Yeah,
something
I don't.
indecent. It's
Yeah,
okay,
so
right?
I don't know. Like, I don't really have a problem with that. And people went crazy
So,
online. Like, I mean,
well,
so I defended a guy who eats his own excrement. He's not bothering anybody, and then people went crazy on me.
well,
Like,
okay, I have so I'm kind of contradict myself, but not in a Marxist way. So okay, so this is what I would say. Um, it's when you start looking at these as militant operations to agitate. Okay, so now let's have a different conversation, because
okay,
now are we talking about, what are we talking about? Are we talking so and they're cloaking it in free speech, or right? They're
I totally see where you're going with this. I totally see where you're
right,
going with this. But
right,
we also have the phenomena, I think, that's really important. And like, these people have some kind of kink. And what was that guy, Sam Brinton, the guy who stole in the Biden administration, who stole the women's luggage?
right. Oh yeah,
Anyone?
that guy. Yeah, well, yeah,
Yeah,
that
there's a great thing, by the way. Who wore it better? And they had him in the dresses and the people he stole from. Their
yeah.
pictures. Like, whoever did that, that was really funny. I really, really made me laugh. But we do have the phenomenon of these people who dress up with dogs, and they have every right to do so. You
I
know,
guess my question is, are they agitating? Are they being agitators? Are they and the reason I'm asking that is
mm,
because that is a dialectical action, right? It's part of the belief system underpinning it, meaning I have to conflict with normalcy, right, in order to progress. So we need to generate conflict. We need to get out there and show ourselves, right? It's
okay.
not about it's inauthentic in that they're saying they are trying to you know for whatever rights, they're saying, hey, we need rights too. You can't suppress us. You need to realize our existence, that type of thing. But really, it's a bunch of bullshit, because they are doing it because they have a divine imperative to agitate and
No,
conflict with the
I
people.
get that.
So
I don't just get, like, I grok that. Like, I
yeah.
deeply understand. So,
So how do we at that point, if how do we discern what is agitation and what is authentic
but
expression of
even if
whatever
it's
they're doing?
agitation, okay, so let's say that the idea is to make it normative or to normalize,
Right.
wearing a dog mask. We pull up a dude of a dog mask just so people are like, what are these guys talking about? And I'm sure people are like, what on earth are these guys talking about? But let's say that that's just their maybe mask isn't the right term. I don't know. I'm not too familiar with these kinds of fetishes. I guess I'm very conservative in that way.
Mhm.
Um, so so even if they were attempting to disrupt and dismantle what is normative there, like, if some people like to, wear diapers or have some kind of, crazy or bizarre fetish, and they just want to be accepted, they're not hurting anybody, and they just want to, I don't know what they want to do. I don't know, it's just so
So
weird to me. Like, soil themselves in a diaper, whatever they want to do. It's like, they're not hurting anybody. There's a video of people in these, I don't know what it is, like a costume or a,
yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
Oh, there's the furry
yeah, for
people. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I don't have a problem with necessarily what they're doing in their own private lives or anything like that. But when you're doing it to transform society itself, it's not because this is what I do, and this is what I like to do. It's different because you're actually trying to transform society against their will, no
But couldn't
less.
you could make the same argument for homosexuality in the well, almost any time before the recent time, right? That
But are they
yeah,
That's what I'm saying. Are they
they're
agitating?
they are agitating. They're attempting to transform society. They're attempting to make it normative.
Well, okay, no. So that's the thing. Like, I know Christians probably don't want to hear this, but like, homosexuality has been around since like the
Forever.
beginning,
Yeah.
forever. And so okay, so here's the difference. So you have homosexuality.
Yeah. What's the difference here?
Okay, homosexuality is one thing. Attaching it to queer theory is completely different.
No, I totally agree.
Right.
I totally agree.
So
But what's
right.
the difference in terms of like their it's the sentiment is the same, right? They're protesting because they want to normalize. I don't even
Well,
want to say a fetish because I don't think it's a fetish. Well,
there's a
in
little
that
bit
case, it actually is a
um,
fetish. But they want to normalize their kink,
well, okay, so
and
there's
they
this
want
weird
people to accept their kink.
yeah, there's this weird thing where you could make an argument for the, gay rights movement where they there was a authentic need for to be, especially like with whatever to in law, or just what everybody gets is the same, right? Like what
Yeah.
married couples get, they get, right? And uh uh there's something probably authentic about that, that and that there's a non-Marxist acceptance that of that this just is. This is an objective reality. This kind of, if you want to make an authentic argument bound in objective reality, that just there's just gay people. There just are, right, right, and that is, and this is the problem. This is what the problem with progressivism is, because that can never come alone. It always comes with the progress, the Marxian, like
Okay. Okay.
queering
No, I get that,
of
but
everybody.
we're still at the same juncture though, because we have people with dog masks. Uh,
Well,
oh,
no,
hey, yeah.
now we're talking about a choice versus just
Oh, it's well,
right.
unless you want to say that like nobody really chooses what they like sexually. I mean, I never chose to be
Um,
heterosexual. I just got lucky. I'm not I don't have any like weird shit, you know.
um, I mean, yeah, I could see. I mean, I could see both sides of that. I guess my thing is, I I keep coming back to, are you agitating? And like there I think to me that if we're going to draw a line in the sand, it's at, let people love who they're going to love, right? And don't, and then it, but your kink stuff, that's the line. Like you can do it, don't agitate us with it, right? That's
You know,
that's for me anyway.
I saw a picture of I think Rogan tweeted this out many years ago. I don't think you'll be able to find it, Reed, but it was a guy in like 1890 and like sitting in a like this like super masculine dude just kind of sitting in a chair, and the grainy photo, and then it had like like man in 1990, and then it had like this emasculated guy, this thin guy with blue hair, like on his knees, um fetishized. And one of my ex-girlfriends from a long, long time ago, I'm still in good terms with everybody, which is pretty good, sent me a DM or a text or something, and she said, like, "Isn't this great? Like, people can just fully express themselves the way they want to express themselves." And I thought that was an interesting response. It was
Mm.
also one that I was thinking about. There is a distinction. I don't know to the extent that this bleeds into the conversation between the private sphere and the public sphere.
Right. Yeah.
There's a distinction between like
Yep.
wh- when I go to Hungary, like everybody dresses well. We're gonna go. Reed and I are gonna go there next month. Not the Scottish Reed. People. It's just that those distinctions are not blurred as they are here.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
all right. Hey, so I want to do a few things. Mushy Season, thank you so much for the memberships. We really appreciate it. We appreciate everybody who supports the stream and supports the show. Yeah, Mushy Season, thanks. He's a really good friend of the show. Trader Bear, we have a few friends of the show come back, so we really appreciate that. We're a nonprofit. We're trying to elevate our discourse here. We have a super chat. Let's see that, Read. Trader Bear, $10. Good friend of the show. Pup play has been around for decades. That's what it's called, pup play, I think. Yeah. But it generally increased 15 to 20 years ago with millennials.
Yeah.
It is a mask that helps allow them to escape reality and exist and interact as a dog with others. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, if that's really what someone wants to do, I couldn't possibly. I mean, I actually have real shit that I'm trying to deal with, real problems. And if
Yeah.
someone wants to dress as a dog or a goat, there's a guy who lives as a goat. Best of luck to you, man. Go
See,
for it.
well, and I guess my issue is that
Yeah,
like
there he is.
I have
He's
a
dressed up as a goat. This is awesome. This is one of my favorite videos ever. Yeah, what's your take on that?
well, no, it's just that like if you were to pop the hood under that movement, I bet you'd find queer theory just about
Oh, I'm
everywhere.
sure of it. I'm
Inside.
positive.
And
Yeah.
that's the problem, I think, is the slippery slope isn't the fetish necessarily. Even I know people are going to may push against this, but it's the queer theory itself that is the slippery. It's kind of weird. I always say the slippery slope is queer theory. That's the
Yeah,
slippery
yeah.
slope itself.
So you don't have problems with that guy making artificial prostheses and like hanging out with goats and eating, as long as the guy who owns the land is cool with it. You don't have a problem with him eating
Yeah,
grass and
yeah, yeah.
like
Because it's not trying
making goat noises.
if he's not attached to any movement to reorient society, I could care less what he's doing.
Mm.
And that's my biggest thing is
But
like, are you trying?
what if the movement to reorient society is to have, goat acceptance or something, like for people to accept guys who want to pretend to be goats in fields?
But are we, let's see, and that's where I'm back to, like, I have, like, immediately my radar goes up and my suspicion goes up to, is like, no, you want an undifferentiated all. You want
Yeah.
everything to be
Yeah.
acceptable. And therefore you're part of the queer theory movement. And
Yeah. So, okay. So that is the everything to be acceptable. And that's the, I'm
there's
trying,
no limits,
minor
unlimited.
attracted persons or something.
Oh,
And
dude. Yeah.
right,
Slippery slope, right? The whole
right.
thing,
So,
right? Yeah.
but I think that's just a lack of, like, we just can't accept nuance. Like, we can draw some pretty hard lines. Like, you have to wear clothes, or certainly clothes on your bottom, and there are hygienic reasons for that. And we have to have an age of sexual consent. I think they recently wanted to lower it in Iran because of the uh, Muslim Prophet Muhammad's last wife, Aisha. But in the West, in our society, we have certain rules and norms that we abide by as a part of the social contract. And if you want to do something that's outside that norm, I don't know. I guess maybe I just see both sides. Like, I totally see the agitation part. I totally see the dismantle, disrupt, the queer theory underpinning of it. But we still left with the phenomenon, and the phenomenon is people want to walk in
Yeah.
American cities and protest or whatever they want to do. They just want to, freedom of assembly. They want to get together and assemble and be, goats or sheep or whatever they want to pretend to do.
Well,
Or
one of my mutuals on Twitter, he calls this the ground that we walk upon. So even in the context, whether it be like critical race theory or queer theory or like or tribalism, right? Is even if we took out, we got rid of queer theory, we would still have people looking at each other through a racial lens to some capacity. It's just built intrinsically into our human nature because we're visual beings, right? We notice different things all the time, right? And so you could say that fetish that you're talking about, that ground is still there. So there's somewhere inside of humans that cause people to orient this way that has nothing to do with queer theory, right? And I guess right. So that exists, and so the problem is that the left, the progressive left, leverages that ground and pathologizes it, right? And so they leverage the things that are intrinsically built in, hardwired into humans.
Yeah, they pathologize that. So they pathologize heteronormativity. They pathologize, and so you want to queer it by dismantling. Again, it's all dismantling and disrupting.
Right. So you're right that the ground is still there, and as humans, like, okay, we just need to accept the grounds as they're not hurting anybody. The ground is still there. Humans do stuff like this, whatever. But the problem is, it's not. I guess I would say it's actually not. I mean, it is a little bit our fault for not pushing back as hard as we could have, but we're not the ones that have made this extraordinarily difficult to discern anymore. right?
Yeah, so that's the problem. That's the problem. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's really complicated, and we have to wrap up because we're
Yeah.
coming at an hour and a half. But it's really complicated because if you're wrong about being gay, who cares? Like,
Right.
it doesn't make any difference. But
Right.
if you're wrong about being trans and you're medicalized, I have a close friend of mine who's a doctor, and she's working with, I don't know if you saw the interview that Reed and I did with Eitan Haim. I'm sorry I mispronounced his name, but it's his Israeli name. But she was telling me that this child of 12, 1, 2, wants to, or is receiving hormones and wants to get surgery, and the parents want this kid to have surgery. So the problem, and then we're wrapping up, but the problem is that it does seem that there's a lack of nuance, like that we can't just say as a society, like, okay, we're drawing the line here. We're drawing the line. We have to have some hard lines.
Mhm.
And I personally don't think a guy dressing as a dog is that hard line. Like, I think like the kid thing is a hard line.
Well, I think that's what I'm saying. The agitation aspect, I think for me, is a hard, like, if you're agitating and you're trying to transform society, this and upend it all, right? And that needs to be mitigated. Not necessarily stopped, but
Mm.
mitigated, right? You can't stop
Well,
it.
you
People
can
are
you can mitigate it. Like, I mean, I don't really think anybody cares, or anybody who's not like some really weirdo, that if people have drag queen events. I think that the issue is that they have minors going to those events. That's the
right.
issue. No one really,
Yeah.
who cares about drag queens? I mean, I didn't know RuPaul was a famous drag queen in the 90s. I don't know if RuPaul's still around.
Yeah,
but,
when you do it up in a public space, you're exposing everybody, whether they like it or not, to the kink, right?
yeah,
So,
and I guess my problem isn't exposing everybody. That's the price you pay for living in a free society. It's like, again, this is a longer conversation, but
yeah.
we need some norms in
Yep.
society, and I don't think that's a radical thing to say.
Nope.
We need some protection of Gnostic death cult for $5. Thanks for doing this, Peter. Classic is a gem. And remember, kids, stay out of wizard circles.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think it makes me some kind of radical conservative to say that we need some norms in society. Nor do
Absolutely.
I think it makes me some kind of radical liberal to say that freedom of assembly is one of our most cherished rights, and we need to allow people to express themselves, provided it's in certain non-destructive. And
Yeah.
again, I
Well,
realize that's fraught with danger. That
and that's why I go back to, we need to mitigate the left's pathologizing of of the assembly, like the freedom of assembly.
yeah.
We have to mitigate that because they're taking complete advantage of it, like they do, and subverting it and transforming it as they always do everything, right? And so
Mm.
that's our work, is to identify that, and the injection points of where they're pathologizing this stuff, and mitigate against it.
Awesome. All right. Hey, thank you very much. Hey, where can people, and make sure to leave your browser open, and where can people find you?
I'm mostly on Twitter, on Classic Liberal. It's Classic Liberal, but it's a 1-2 at the end of it. And I think shortly I am working with a few people. I don't have it for me on now, but we're going to do some Substacks and articles, and I'm probably going to do some podcasts of my own, kind of covering a lot of this stuff.
Good. Yeah. We kept it kind of general today, but I'll do a deep dive on the Frankfurt School or Hegel, or I haven't thought about that stuff in a while, but I'm happy to do deep dive on some of those issues with you. I've talked about it.
Yeah. Awesome.
Read about it quite a bit. So thank you so much for joining, for being on Conversations with Peter Boghossian. I love your feed, and I think what you're doing is so important to educate people and inform them. So thanks for that. Thanks, Clint. Appreciate it.
And thanks, Peter.
And thanks, Reed, for everything, for what you do. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. This falls under the umbrella of my nonprofit, National Progress Alliance. Your generous donations keep us going and help fuel content like this. We truly appreciate your support. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next one.